So I'm back for chapter 1, still continuing with professionalism, but now we're going to be focusing solely on social media. And believe me, there is a lot to cover here. So, now I did not get this from your textbook. I had to go to some outside sources to really get some truly good and updated information. So a lot of this comes from the OAE. I felt like that was a solid source because it is focused on Ohio educators and their specific social media guidelines. So we're going to go over some do's and don'ts. Our first do: know the privacy settings for any social media platform that you use. And be aware that they can make changes and updates sometimes, and you're not always aware of them. So you want to make sure that you understand what your options are in terms of levels of privacy, what is right for you. But the OAE does recommend you should only share with people that you truly know personally, friends and true family. They also have some recommendations if you're on Twitter to recommend blocking tweets that only individuals that you approve can see them. The point of this is you want to have control over who sees your information, and you don't want it out there for absolutely everyone to see, such as parents and students. There's a great site you can go to called whoishostingthis.com. And it can help you look at social media privacy settings for any social media platform. All right, another one. Do understand there is no such thing as a private post. None. Even if you are only sharing it with your colleague, co-teacher, it's still not private. And why is that? Have you ever shared a screenshot of something? Okay, as soon as you put it out there, it can be captured in a screenshot and then shared to the whole world. So once you publish something on social media, you do lose some control over it as soon as someone else sees it, as soon as someone else receives that message. So there are a lot of ways that your information can be shared even if you have good privacy settings. So there's no private posts. Here's some examples. So here's a teacher. She posted this on her social media site. It says, "Well, I have an annual IEP this morning with lawyers and crazy parents. The student is a hot mess, but so sweet. So after work, I'm hitting happy hour. At least I have something to look forward to. Deep breath, I'm going in." So she probably thought she was being pretty cute and snarky, but you know what? The parents saw this before that IEP meeting even started. That's how quickly things can get shared. And she ended up getting, I believe she got fired for this post. Here's some other examples. So Memphis, and I actually used to work in Memphis. So these are teachers who were fired for sending inappropriate messages. So if you look down below. So what happened was, a group of teachers were chatting with one another, making fun of their 8th grade students, and in particular poking fun at one student. Well, there was a student teacher who happened to be part of this messaging circle. She took a screenshot of those inappropriate messages and sent it to, I believe, probably the principal. And obviously all those teachers got in trouble and were fired. So they thought they were having this private little conversation among their close-knit group of colleagues, but still got busted for it because it was inappropriate to be making fun of their students. All right, do understand that there are limits to your First Amendment rights. Freedom of speech does not mean that you can say anything you want wherever you want, especially as an educator. Freedom of speech rights are more limited for educators than just about anyone else. So we are allowed to speak out as citizens on matters of what they call public concern, as long as it does not disrupt school. So it cannot be directly or even indirectly about your students, parents, community, or even about the demographics of your students, parents, or community. So also matters of concern are not protected. So you cannot just get online and have personal gripes. You can't talk about drugs or alcohol. You can't necessarily even complain about your workplace situation. So there are a lot of limitations when it comes to freedom of speech. So here's a Georgia teacher who was having a heated discussion on Facebook with her idea that all lives matter. And then she took it obviously a big step forward, and you can see down below where she was talking about thugs and saying some derogatory things about who she deemed were thugs. Well, you know what? She's from a South Georgia middle school where 1/3 of her students are African American. So even though she might have felt like she was talking about a matter of public concern, it's also a matter that deeply touches a large percentage of the students at her school. So this was something that she actually got into a lot of trouble for, obviously. So what happened? So at first they suspended her without pay to investigate it. The state appeals court dismissed the complaint on the legal basis, saying that she could not sue over the matter. So the courts upheld what the school had decided. Some other examples. So here's a Florida teacher, and I think I might have shown this one previously, who had anti-gay marriage posts on Facebook. And again, he might feel like, well, perhaps this is his personal opinion on matters of public concern, but again, teachers' rights are somewhat limited on this. He was even considered a former teacher of the year, but those comments might affect students, might affect or relate to parents. So it's not something that you can just say and assume that it's not touching your workplace. It's not touching your students. Remember, when it comes to those professional dispositions, one of the big ones was looking out for student welfare, for the well-being of your students, parents, and communities. And being derogatory towards them does not do that. Here's a teacher who was fired after making racist comments about Michelle Obama on Facebook. Okay, some other ones. Learn the licensure code. Now, I'm not going to go over all of them because, to be honest, it does change from time to time, and it's not the most exciting reading in the world. But before you get your first job, do take a look at the code in regards to our profession. Find out if your school or your district has its own policy. Not all of them do, which I find quite surprising. I was one of the first people to bring this up in the College of Ed a couple of years ago and was surprised that we didn't have a policy at that time. So, find out what your school or district's policy is and make sure that that is also one of your guiding principles, because you will be held responsible whether you know about the policy or not. And if your school does not have one, that is a moment for you to shine. Volunteer to investigate. Volunteer to head up a committee to look into this. There are a lot of schools out there doing some great things. Here's an Ohio superintendent coming up with a model of how to do this for other administrators. All right, do keep work and play separate. So what do I mean by that? Well, one thing you might want to consider is never use school property for your own personal communications. So let's say you get a new job and wow, they give you a laptop. That's awesome. Or they give you a Chromebook or an iPad. Don't use it for your Facebook. Don't use it for your Yahoo or your Gmail account, because I tell you what, there's a good chance that through their network communications that they can track what you're doing. So keep work and play separate, and that is one way of doing that. Another way of doing that, don't get on your school computer and log onto your personal email. Or bring your laptop and go through the school's network to do your own personal business. Access your personal email through the school's Wi-Fi even. There are things that do get flagged and things that can be tracked. You really should keep those things separate, although to be honest, not that many people do that. But so here's one special education teacher. He was given a school-issued laptop and was using it for his personal business of looking at porn. And whenever he well, he was discovered having the porn on his computer and obviously lost his job over it. I'm sure he thought that it was private because it was on there. So here's another one. This one is horrible. So a teacher, out of the kindness of her heart, let one of her middle school students borrow her phone because the student needed it. Well, that student very quickly went through that teacher's phone and found some naked selfies of the teacher and then shared them. And the teacher's fired for it. Okay, now technically the student did have the poor behavior here. They're the one who took the image from the teacher's phone and shared it and should not have done that. But the teacher was fired for having the selfie on her phone. Okay, so do keep a clear distinction between personal and professional identities online. All right, so the other one is really kind of about your hardware and, you know, keeping your phones and all your laptops and things separate. This one is about your social media accounts. It is highly recommended that from your personal social media accounts that you do not friend students or parents or people that you know professionally. That if you do want to use social media in a professional manner, have 2 separate accounts. One for your friends and your fun pictures in your social life, and one for your professional life. And to keep those clear boundaries. And teachers have gotten fired for not doing so. So here's a sweet lady. She was a substitute teacher. She loved her students very much and wanted to stay friends with them on Facebook so she could see pictures and share pictures with them. She refused to unfriend them, which was the school's policy, and she got fired. Here's a younger teacher. So this substitute teacher, not only did she have friends that were students on Facebook, but she wanted to give them personal advice. So she thought this could be a good forum for reaching out to these students, give them someone to talk to. I think she probably had very good intentions, but that really fuzzied up that boundary between students and teachers, and she got fired for doing so. Monitor your own internet presence. So you want to keep track of what is out there on the internet about you, because even if you haven't posted it, you can still be held accountable for it. So whether you want to search your name every so often, be aware there are a lot of imposters out there, especially on Facebook. You might want to set up a Google alert to let you know when there's something you might need to check out. I know a lot of individuals who, after they graduate, do an intense, detailed examination of their social media account and do a lot of deleting before applying for that first job. And also be aware, I know on social media sites like Facebook this is true, I'm not sure about others, if a friend tags you on a picture, so let's say you're out and perhaps you're drinking and you're taking some fun pictures, and maybe you know that you shouldn't post that, but your friend posts it and tags you on it. You've now lost control in some ways over the privacy settings of that photo and could still be held responsible for it even if you weren't the one who posted it. So, there are things you can do, like in Facebook, to keep an eye on photos that you might be tagged in. Good information to know. You can also go into your settings and disable things like that. Do not, and this one might sound obvious, but don't post profanity, obscenity, or anything that makes you look bad. I can assure you, even though they're not supposed to, whenever you apply for a position, that principal, that committee chair, that superintendent, whoever it is that gets your resume, they're also going to search for you on any social media account that they're linked to. So get rid of anything that makes you look bad. Whether you are drinking, whether you might be using drugs or near someone using drugs or joking about drugs, dressed inappropriately, whatever. If you're not sure, take it down. So here's one. This is a high school English teacher fired for that picture right there. To be honest, as far as I'm concerned, there's nothing wrong with that picture. She's smiling. She's got a glass of wine. She's got a glass of beer. She's having a good time. But teachers are held to a higher standard. You can get fired over a picture like that. This one is pretty bad too. So this teacher posted this picture of herself and it just says drunken pirate. It was probably a Halloween party. You can't even tell what she's drinking. For all I know, it could be water or Kool-Aid in there. But she still got into trouble because of the word drunken. This one kills me. So these are two teachers, met, fell in love, got married. Go away on their honeymoon, post this fun picture. Yes, his hand is on her breast. Well, guess what? She got fired for it. He didn't get fired. Because it wasn't about whose hand was where, it was about the fact that she posted it socially on social media and he didn't. So, again, you've got to be truly careful. And in case you're curious, things from your past can also come back to haunt you. So here was a highly regarded guidance counselor. She was getting ready to go up for tenure, and someone found old modeling pictures of her online that were from her past before she worked as a guidance counselor. She still got fired for them. So clean up your past. And like I said, I love that Facebook even has some functions for you to be able to do this. Don't vent online. We all have bad work days. We all have frustrations. But as a teacher, under no circumstances should you share those personal stories on social media, especially if it includes names or job titles, anything about your colleagues, about your bosses, about your students. None of it. So here's an example. Here's a teacher who lost his job after commenting about students and parents on Facebook. All right, this is a very tame post in my opinion. She just says, "So not looking forward to another year at Cohasset schools." That's it. I'm sure a lot of people probably feel that way, that maybe they're not looking forward to going into work. She was fired for that because, again, the impression that it gives. Okay? So if you want to keep your job, keep your griping offline. Here's a teacher who loses their job. Hold on here. So this teacher, Massachusetts high school teacher, was describing their students as germ bags and said that the parents were snobby and arrogant. Lost her job after making those kind of comments online. Here's another one. So this was through Snapchat. The teacher says, these damn kids and parents, not enough money for school supplies or passing grades, but they're out here renting horses. So she was sitting in her car and she was complaining that some of the students who were going to the prom, I guess they had rented horses and limousines and things, and so she was complaining about them, and she got in trouble over that Snapchat post. Don't post anything related to a student whatsoever, even if you think you're being funny, even if you think you're being kind, and also don't try to provide counseling to students online. All right, so I have a good friend who is a teacher in a different state out west, and he regularly posts about his students. And I don't understand it because he's a very good teacher. He wins awards and things. But here are just a couple examples, and I took them off of his Facebook post, but you can see I tried to obscure any names or faces. Well, names. So he basically, what he likes to do is make fun of the responses that they give on their homework assignments because he thinks it's funny. And yeah, it could be funny, but it's perhaps not funny to those kids. Perhaps it's not funny to their parents. So I'm surprised he hasn't gotten in trouble over this yet. Here's another one. So another teacher venting online. Venting about unruly fifth graders, and this one is really horrible. She basically refers to a girl had drowned on a class trip, and so she said, "After today, I'm thinking the beach is a good trip for my class. I hate their guts." That's horrible. So some of these posts I think are a little bit benign, but some of them I do think that perhaps the teacher does need to be out of the classroom based upon the attitude that they are presenting. Don't join groups that might be considered unprofessional or inappropriate. And if you know you're in one of those groups, leave it. So whether you know it or not, especially on sites like Facebook, people can see what you like and people can see what groups you're a part of. And think also about how that relates to what you're sharing, what you're retweeting perhaps. So, the Patton College of Education did recently come up with its own social media policy. I wanted to show it to you because at some point, it might even be in your 2020 class, you're going to need to read this, sign it, and return it. Because I think as we have seen, this is very important information that we all need to understand and to take seriously. So, thank you for your attention very much. That's the end of our section on professionalism